and we're going to actually go on the record. So you have in the house, let me tell you about who's in the room. We have the legendary Judge Alex, but we have Tristan, who's one of my favorite blabbers. And Alex, you want to follow him. He is based in Australia, so obviously he's fabulous. And he coaches businesses around the world and how they can make a greater impact on the world. So a really good guy to know. So wanted you guys to connect as well. So here's what's going to happen today. If you have not experienced a blab, let me tell you a couple quick things. Tristan gave a great tip, and that is if you want to ask Judge Alex a question, you simply /Q, type your question, and that will show up. And then the fabulous Tristan's already given you an example. Tristan, have you got time to play co-host for me today?
I can for a little bit, but I have got a couple of things.
I love you for that. So yeah, if you are wanting to get us better connection, one of his great tips was to use Chrome as your browser. So Judge Alex, tell people a little bit about yourself if they don't know that you're already a rock star on TV. I did promise for the record that I would call him Your Royal Highness. Done.
It's fine.
Your Majesty. Oh my God. Okay, the list keeps getting longer, but Alex, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. You're already getting a bazillion props. So if you love Judge Alex, you just click on the hands and that will easily get him up to 1,000 within seconds, I'm sure. So Judge Alex, tell people a little bit about yourself, hon.
I think that's my mom clicking on the hands right there. Well, I was born in Cuba. I came to the U.S. at a very young age. I've lived in Miami my whole life. I became a police officer in Miami. I was the youngest cop. I was 19 years old when I became a police officer. In fact, I was so young I couldn't buy my own gun or bullets. I actually had to have my mom go with me to the gun shop to buy my off-duty weapon because I couldn't buy it. And then I worked my way through college and through law school as a police officer. I would go to school during the day, and then I'd work from 4 to midnight as a cop. And then when I graduated, I became an attorney in Miami, practiced here, and eventually ran for judge and became the youngest circuit judge in Miami at the age of 34. So those are real clapping hands.
Yeah. I actually do real claps, but everyone has given you I've never seen someone get so many props in seconds. Goodness me. It's going to be, thank you, Sylvie, for attempting to give me 10% of the judge's props. Oh my God. Keep talking, Judge.
So then I was a judge in Miami. I handled a lot of very high profile cases. I had a case that was turned into a book called Without a Trace, about a girl who disappeared in Miami. And her mother started getting calls every week from a guy saying he had her daughter, and the calls continued for 21 years.
Oh, that's awful.
It was just a horrible, bizarre case. I also had I also tried the case that became the movie Pain and Gain with Mark Wahlberg and The Rock. And then after about 10 years, I've been teaching judges at the time, and I'd been on the bench for 10 years in criminal and family. I had been a civil litigator before that. I decided to apply for the appellate court, and I was about 2 weeks away from my confirmation or from my hearing with the governor, my meeting with the governor. I had been unanimously nominated for the seat, and television called and said, let's do a TV show. So it was a major fork in the road, but I jumped off and did Judge Alex, which aired for 9 years nationally in about 96% of the U.S. until about a year and a half ago. The company that produced it got out of the business of syndication, and that ended the show. So I still do a lot of legal commentary for Fox News, for CNN, for any network that calls me. And I am a partner in a firm called Morgan & Morgan, which is in 5 different states. And I'm pitching several different shows that are working their way through the pipeline. And getting into professional speaking, which is how I met Neen.
Nice. So
awesome professional speaker.
If people want to follow you now, Alex, there's a couple ways. They can follow you on Twitter. You've got a huge following, so it's Judge Alex. And you can see, if you want to follow Judge Alex on Blab, you can click simply on his face. If you want, you'll see that. You'll be able to click in that way, or up on the round faces as well. You can connect with him on Facebook as well. You are regularly on TV. The fabulous Tristan has posted a link to Judge Alex's Twitter handle as well. So thanks for doing that, Tristan. You are the most good-looking host. No offense, Alex. You're just the guest. You're just the talent today. Are we clear? Okay. So a couple other things you can do. Alex is regularly on Periscope and has quite a big following on there. So if you're a Periscoper, you might also like to connect with him in that way. So a couple of things. Gary wanted to know about your TV show, and you answered that as far as whether you're still doing that show. You're not doing Judge Alex anymore, but I know that you commentary on a lot. Can you just repeat some of the ones for those people who do want to watch you? Where can they find you now, Alex?
Well, I do commentary whenever asked, so it's not something where I can say regularly every Monday at this time. But Fox News has me on a show called Outnumbered about every couple of weeks out of New York. It's a 12 o'clock show, 4 women on a couch and 1 guy. That's why it's called Outnumbered. They rotate the guy.
I bet you love that show.
I love that show. That is my happy place.
We don't want to hear about your happy place, just for the record.
It's a fun show. They cover a lot of topics in an hour, from pop culture to politics to law. So I enjoy doing that one. Usually if I'm in town, I'll try to run over and do a legal show at noon with Ashley Banfield at CNN. So I do those, but I'm randomly called. So like tonight, Megyn Kelly, well, today's a weekend, but on any night, Megyn Kelly at Fox might call me, or Don Lemon at CNN and ask me to be on that night. So it's kind of an impromptu thing. The Judge Alex show may come back, or may come back in a different form, because other companies have approached me and talked about bringing it back, but we haven't reached any agreement. So no news yet.
So I want to acknowledge a couple of people that have joined us, some of my favorite people. Tweeting Goddess, Samantha from Ireland, has joined us. So nice to see her. Sylvie from New York, Judge, Alex, you know her from the National Speakers Association. So the gorgeous Sylvie's in the house. Besides Tristan, who's our good-looking co-host, we also have some other people that you may or may not know. So I encourage you to follow Ben. Ben, I wish I could pronounce your name. I'm going to try Requena. It's probably wrong. But if you're not following Ben, he wrote a great program or a blog on 40 tips on how to use Blab. So, Sylvie is asking when you're going to go and visit the National Speakers Association chapter in New York, Alex. So they meet pretty regularly.
Well, they should send me an invitation on the day they're meeting. And I get to New York, like I said, every couple of weeks. I'd be happy to drop by. I'd be glad to do that. There you
go. So one of the things that Eileen's asking, can she jump in? Absolutely, honey. Just click on the seat. You're absolutely welcome. Judge Alex has a couple questions for you that are coming up on the chat. One of them is, have you ever been to Ireland? That's from the gorgeous Samantha, the Tweeting Goddess. Have you been to Ireland?
I have. I've been to Ireland twice, and once I went with my wife, and then I went with my wife and kids, and I love Ireland. I mean, the people are so friendly. We went to this. Oh, hi.
This is Eileen. Eileen, meet Judge Alex.
Hi.
Hi, Tristan.
I was saying, when I was in Ireland, I went to this bed and breakfast just outside Kinsale. And, show up, and the lady who runs it's very nice. She's like, oh, there's a pub right down the street. There's always a pub right down the street. So I go to the pub. After we unpack, we go to the pub, and we look at down the bar, and there's the owner of the bed and breakfast. Cheers, raising a glass. And the next morning we had breakfast, and she was so lovely. We left, and she's waving, and I drive down to Kinsale, a little seaside village, shopping for a while. And my wife says, did you pay her? And I'm like, oh my God, I never paid her for the room. So I called her, and I'm like, Ann, this is Alex, And she goes, oh, how are you getting on? I said, fine, but we didn't pay you. She goes, oh, I know. I said, well, why didn't you say something? She goes, I didn't want to be rude. I mean, that's how nice the people are in Ireland. In the U.S., they would have tackled you before you made it to your car.
Right. That's true. And the cool thing is, like Samantha said, the Irish are friendly. They know how to celebrate. I think that's why Irish and Aussies get on so well, right? So, Eileen, you have joined us in the hot seat. So if anyone has a question they want to join, I'm going to be rotating the seats pretty quickly. If anyone wants to jump in, please do so. Eileen, do you have a question for the judge?
Yes. First, I wanted to say very, very pleased to meet you, Judge. Eileen Smith, thanks so much for letting me in. And Tristan is my good Blab buddy here.
Love him.
I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about your social media presence. And I think that Facebook is where you probably are building a lot of community there. But what about Twitter? Just give me a little insight on what you like
The problem with my Facebook and Twitter account is that for 9 years I had a TV show, and the company that produced it never promoted my Facebook and Twitter account, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but they just didn't do it. And I opened I think Facebook first and then Twitter, but so I had Facebook longer, and so it grew an audience that's bigger. I think I have, I don't know, maybe 285,000 followers on Facebook. But
who wouldn't want that? That's awesomeness.
Well,
just as a heads up.
With a show on for 9 years across the U.S., I should have 10 times that. But it was just never promoted. It wasn't until the very last year of the show that they started doing a run on the show that said, follow me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter. So Twitter came later, and again, not being promoted, it's got a smaller following. But, I'm trying to grow it whenever I can.
It's a great question. So tell people maybe about the Periscope. How have you been using Periscope, Judge? Because I saw there was, you were mentioning the Kentucky clerk that was, something about an arrest with the driver's license, and she had religious beliefs. And I said to the judge, I'm clueless about stuff. Yeah, but you are always Periscoping about cases, right?
Yeah, I like Periscope because the problem with Twitter is that it's hard to explain legal concepts in 140 characters. It's just
fancy that.
It's kind of like when I go on and do legal commentary on a show, other than Outnumbered, which is an hour long. Most shows have you on for a 3-minute to 5-minute segment. Television time is so valuable. So, they ask you a legal question and they expect you, or maybe 3 legal questions in 3 minutes. And it's so difficult to explain in that time. And my fans on Twitter would say, I saw this segment, but I didn't understand this or that. So I like Periscope because then I can hop on it and I can talk like we're doing now. I can explain things in more detail. Yesterday, a lot of people were talking about the clerk in Kentucky who was refusing to issue marriage licenses to gay people because of her religious beliefs. And so I posted something on it, and the comments were like flying everywhere.
It was crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So there's a couple of questions, honey, that have come in. One of them is from Beth. If you want to ask a question, it's just /Q, and that will highlight Tristan's been awesomely moderating and directing them to me. Thank you for sharing. So one of the questions that Beth has for you, Alex, is what is your opinion about the increasing activist judge rulings appearing more frequently? So does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Typically,
thanks, Tristan.
Typically what happens is when, the judges, and let's talk about Supreme Court judges first, because we have judges at every level that do this. But judges,
let's talk about Supreme Court judges, because that's what we do at 11:30 on a Saturday. Sorry, just saying.
Because usually when they're talking about activist judges, they go right to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court gives a ruling that you agree with, they're not activist judges. If they give a ruling that you disagree with, they're activist judges. That's what ultimately what it comes down to. But what they're referring to is that judges are not supposed to make law. They're supposed to interpret law. The problem is that the reason the Constitution of the United States has lasted as long as it has, the reason it rarely had to be amended, is because as time goes by and society changes, the judges interpret the Constitution in accordance with social norms and changes in society and things like that. And of course, some people don't want the changes, and there's a backlash there. So judges, as judges are, for example, we always hear the example of segregation. We had segregation, and the Supreme Court justices interpreted the separate but equal was not equal, and they got rid of that doctrine, and that made a change that a lot of people didn't like. Those people would have said those judges are activist judges. They're not interpreting law. They're changing. They're making law. And that's the reality, is that there are different laws. There are statutory laws that legislators write, but there's also constitutional law, which is interpreted by the Supreme Court. And that happens at the lower levels too, when judges say, I understand, there's the nuances in the law and I'm going to interpret it this way. People don't like it, say they're being activist judges. And I, sometimes I agree with them. Sometimes I go, that judge is overreaching here. And sometimes I don't.
So there's some. Say one. Yeah, another question, Eileen, because there is a couple.
Yeah, on my way out, I just wanted to get your impressions of Blab, what you think of it. So whenever you get a chance. And
I like it. This is my first time on. This is my first time.
So Alex is a Blab virgin. So I just want to let people know in the house. And there was a question that was highlighted before. Yeah, Eileen just wanted to pop your Blab cherry. I will.
Thank you so much.
But what I want you to do is, I'd love to hear, from you, Alex. What do you think about Blab as a platform? I know you're a big fan of Periscope. If you haven't already given him props, he's up to 3,000. I'm so jealous. Sylvie, thanks for giving me some sympathy props. Before Eileen jumps out, make sure you give her some props as well. Sorry, Alex, to interrupt you.
I'm so jealous that you can see that tiny number because I'm looking on my little screen here on my phone. I can barely read the number. I like this platform. I'm trying to figure out how you're doing it because I'm doing it on a phone. So if I were on a computer, I think I'd have more tools available in front of me to say, this is how you bring people in and stuff like that. But since I'm doing it on my phone, I don't have a lot of...
So Ben, thanks for taking screenshots. So there's a couple things you can do with Blab, Alex, and Tristan can jump in because he is so good at this. You can engage community, I think, as a thought leader. You can interview experts. You can showcase books. You can give live coaching. You can give opinion. And Alex, I think that's awesome for you. You can get other people to debate as well. And so I think that's neat. You can increase engagement because of giving props, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. You can click on the blue tell a little bird. I love that Ben takes screenshots, and that's a really fun way to help promote it in social media as well. I've done blabs on how thought leaders can use this, so if you want to watch the replay of that, you can go across and see it. Alex, thinking about how you use Periscope, how you use Twitter, how you use Facebook, how would Blab fit into your social media suite of products now you've played with it and all these people want to pop your Blab cherry? Oh my God. If anyone wants to jump in on a seat, we have a seat available now that the gorgeous Eileen has popped out. So please, if you want to join us, just click on the open seat. So Alex, what do you think? How does it fit in your suite of products?
I think this is going to be good for the reason I use Periscope, except in Periscope, I'm talking to the camera, but I'm reading what questions pop up. This will be good because I can add people live and we can speak live instead of just reading their questions like I can do below here. So I can have a live chat with people about something I just commented on or whatever. And
that sounds good.
Well, we have a new person.
So we do. So this is the gorgeous Samantha that you hear Tristan and I talking about. She is your Irish friend.
Hi.
Who would happily take you for a beer if you're in Ireland, right?
Makes me want to go to Ireland.
Well, I actually said I would be very happy to help pop your cherry. I'm Blab. Okay. So
that was the only one that was left. But thank you.
Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she? You look gorgeous today. You look fabulous.
Are you talking to Alex?
I'm talking about you.
Oh!
Yeah.
I was like, he always looks great. You're so sweet. This is Saturday comfortable in my office. So yeah. This is what we look like on a Saturday.
You look gorgeous. Yeah. This is me comfortable on a Saturday in Ireland. I live in the southeast.
What questions do you have for Alex?
Well, I think, Alex, one thing I've noticed about Blab is it is a great way to not reinvent yourself, but like if you had a show before, you could relaunch it again here on Blab because it is kind of like a show. I used to do...
great idea.
I used to do Goddess Hour, which was a show on charity radio, so it was voluntary totally, but it was just so much fun. And I really missed it. And now I've started to do 9:00 on Saturdays, Goddess Hour. I'm just using the hashtag, but it's not a show. It's about Twitter. It's Blab, but still, you just don't know what will evolve from it,
So they have goddesses in Ireland too. I thought that was just a U.S. thing.
Goddess, I don't know why. Yeah, it was from my first business. It was called Funky Goddess. You see, I was trying to find a word that sounded strong and powerful for a woman. And then the Goddess tag kind of stuck with me. So now I'm tweeting Goddess. So if you need help with your Twitter, I'm your girl.
Well, I'm going to keep that in mind.
You don't get offers like that every day, Alex. I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't be worried. It's okay. It's okay.
What time is it over there?
It's 5:00 nearly.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sun is actually shining here for a change. But I don't want to hop up. I just thought, if you had a show before, sure, start to get. Wait till you see all the mentions you have on Twitter when you leave this Blab.
Well,
because people are
tell you what, though,
tweeting.
Samantha, I can't do my show on here because my show, I wouldn't want to allow my litigants into my home. And I guess I could do it. I guess I could do it. They
do a new show.
Video, but frankly, I'm not sure that they have video feed in prison. So I'm not sure a lot of my litigants could be here. It'd make it very
a new show and relaunch. Like, I mean, look, I didn't know who you were till today, so there you go. So there's a whole new audience here in Blab
tell him that.
doesn't
Do
know.
not tell him that,
Oh,
Samantha.
sorry.
So yeah, so just for the record,
Ireland.
Alex and I met, I was speaking at the National Speakers Association. Was that in San Diego, honey? I think it was San Diego. Yeah. And there's this good looking man in the front of the room. People are like acknowledging him. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then in the break.
Next to him was me.
And then in the break, he came up to me and said, hey, I have some questions for you. I want to talk to you. So we sat down and people were coming up to him and saying, are you Judge Alex? Hey, Judge Alex. And I was like, are you famous? He's like, nah. So I didn't even know there was a show. I was like, is it like Judge Judy? I mean, how much do you love that question, Alex?
It's like,
so what I learned was,
Judge Judy. I wear the same little doily thing here that she wears. But your assistant Maria knew what the show was.
I know. She's like your biggest fan. The two of them finally met in DC this year. So it was really neat to connect. So she sends you a shout out today, Alex. She and I were talking.
Well, that's all. I was just saying hi. I'll let someone else jump in, okay? Lovely to see you. Lovely to meet you virtually. And keep up the good work.
Some props before she leaves. Give her some love. Thanks, Sam. See you soon, honey.
Thanks for jumping in, Sam.
If someone wants to jump in, Laura's already ready. And you'll have to do it again, Laura. I lost you. If you can click on and say you want to jump in the seat, you'll be welcome to do that. So Alex, one of the things I thought was really cool about your show, what I did learn was it wasn't just a case. You had to be aware of all of the different state laws. So how does someone keep up to date with all that kind of information? Like, how do you do that?
A lot of hard work. I did my show differently than the other TV judges. The other judges use a general fairness principle. Like, you'll never hear Judy say Nebraska law is, she doesn't care. She's basically doing what she thinks is right. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so that's the way Joe Brown did it and Mathis does it and stuff like that. When they approached me to do the show and they told me, look, we approach people who have cases in courthouses all across the country, and we asked them if they want you to decide their case instead of waiting around in that courthouse for that judge. I thought, well, you're going to fly them in from Georgia, New York, Tennessee, Florida to where we're going to do the show, and I'm going to do whatever I want. I mean, maybe they would have won in Georgia and they lose in front of me, and that didn't seem right. So I just decided that wherever the case came from, I would apply the law of that state. Now, the problem is that I could do 9 to 10 trials, 9 to 10 shows in one day. So that meant my first case might be Tennessee law, and the second one Georgia, and the third California, and the fourth New York. And you really had to be on top of it. So obviously I cannot retain all of the law of even one state, let alone 50 states. So it was basically the week before I would try the case, I would get what amounts to a complaint and answer that shows me what the issues are in the case. And then I would call a lawyer who was on staff and say, I need you to pull whatever. I need to know if Texas has a one bite rule in dog bite cases. Some states have a one bite rule, which says you're not liable for your dog biting somebody unless he's bitten somebody before, because once that happens, you're on notice that your dog has violent tendencies. Okay. And then you have other states like California that have strict liability. Your dog bites somebody, you're on the hook. It doesn't matter. So I would find out what the law is in Tennessee. I find out if that county has a leash law, and then I would tape all day, and then I go to my room at night at 6:30, 7:30 at night, and I'd read the case law for the 9 to 10 cases the next day. So I'd go to bed at 1 in the morning. I was up about 6. It was a tough schedule, but at least I felt I was doing them justice because I was applying their law.
So can I ask you another question? If anyone wants to come in to the seat, let us know. I want to really say a huge thank you to Tristan, who's been like a rock star in being able to act as our co-host as well. But, Alex, I'd be interested in knowing, what do you think as far as all of these platforms that are live streaming? What is the impact on the court system with all this live streaming right now?
I don't know that the live streaming at this point makes a lot of impact. They're not live streaming from inside the court. Hi, Gary. Live streaming.
Hi, Gary.
They're not live streaming from inside court. I don't know that has as much impact yet. It may as it grows, but what does have impact, of course, is all of these shows that are covering cases, either gavel to gavel or commenting on cases as they go on. Because you have live in the moment feedback of what's happening in court and opinions about witnesses, where they should be believed or shouldn't be believed or things like that. Now, it doesn't impact the trial so long as the jury follows the instructions of the judge to stay away from any media coverage, to not read stories in the paper, to not watch stories on TV about the case.
That's hard nowadays, though. I mean, seriously, how do you stay away from the media right now? People are carrying the whole world in their cell phone.
Yeah, if you're a juror, you do have to kind of isolate yourself from television news stories. I mean, if you're watching The West Wing, one of your favorite shows, you're not
Love that show.
You're not going to hear something about the case. But if you're watching, local news or cable news, you may hear an update about the case. But that was always true. It's not that different.
Yeah,
it was always true that jurors had to be instructed, don't read the paper, don't watch the news, because there were stories about cases that were on trial in the news. It's just a little more prevalent now, and we have to count on them to do that.
So I want to welcome Gary into the house. So Gary, it's lovely to see you. Give some props to Gary, who jumped into the seat. Gary, do you have a question or a comment for Judge Alex?
Oh, a little of both. I guess it's more of a question than anything else. I'm not typically a fan of like the TV judge shows, although the few times I saw yours, I thought it was a little bit better because, like you said, it wasn't just so much, well, you're an idiot, and that's unfair, whatever. You seem to actually have a little bit more of using the law itself in the cases that you did. But do you think that those type of shows are a net negative or a net positive for the perception of the justice system in general?
I mean, I think it depends on the show, because like you said, some shows let the people run amok and it becomes a very Jerry Springer courtroom, which I didn't really ever want to do. The only time I let people go at each other a little bit was usually on the occasion that sometimes you get a plaintiff in there and, it's intimidating to be in court. It's more intimidating. And my rulings were final and binding. It was just more binding than when I was a judge in Florida, because there was no appeal. It's arbitration. That's what all the court shows, television court shows, are binding arbitration, which is basically private judging. So sometimes the litigants are intimidated, and you would, on occasion, especially when you're in a courtroom that has a million lights on you and cameras pointing at you and stuff. So occasionally I would get a plaintiff that I'd say, okay, tell me about your case. And it's like a deer looking at headlights because they froze. So sometimes then I would turn to the defendant and go, well, why don't you tell me about the case? And the defendant would say something like, well, he's suing me for no reason. He's an idiot. He used to give up, and that would spark the plaintiff up, and he'd go, wait a minute, I'm here because, and that would resolve the problem. That's typically when I would let somebody go at the other one to kind of snap them out of that. But other than that, I tried to curtail that because I just didn't want that Jerry Springerish vibe if I could avoid it. As far as what it does for the court system, I don't really think it does much, because I think people are smart enough to know this is entertainment. This is a TV show. It may be a real case, but it's not the way you conduct yourself in a courtroom, because in a courtroom, a judge may not let you talk like that and may shut you down very quickly. And I would say probably would. Now, I've had discussions with judges. I've been on a panel and I've had a judge speak out and say, I just think that it gives a bad impression of the court system and makes it hard for me to control my courtroom. And my response was, Judge, if you can't control your courtroom, that's really your problem. Right.
Wow.
Because
Judge,
we're not going to get rid of television shows of cops because maybe it gives the jury a wrong impression about cops. And we're not going to get rid of television shows about lawyers because maybe it gives the jury the wrong impression about lawyers. So if you're a judge and you are like frazzled because you can't control your courtroom, I'm not the problem.
So Judge Lynn had a question. Gary, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and ask Lynn's question. And her question to you is, what's your most memorable case, Judge?
Well, and thank you, Gary, for that question. That was a good question. My most memorable case is probably the one that became the movie Pain and Gain with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg. That was an incredible trial. I was the judge who tried the real case. And it was a 4.5-month criminal prosecution with these bodybuilders who basically their business plan, so to speak, became, let's kidnap people, let's rich people, let's take everything they have, and then let's kill them, and let's move on to the next victim. They didn't quite work out the way they they didn't start out with that plan. It developed as they went on, and it didn't work out the way they thought it would. But they almost got away with part of it at the beginning. It was a crazy case. The movie was criticized a lot because Michael Bay turned it into a funny movie. I understand why he did that, because the case itself, as vicious as it was, had so much stupidity on the part of the defendants that it actually was humorous. And we would have sidebars with the lawyers. This was a big death penalty case with multiple defendants, and the lawyers would come sidebar, and we just look at each other and shake our heads. I'd be on the bench, and the lawyers would just start laughing and like holding their laughter because of the stupidity of the actions of. If you see the movie, they dress up like ninjas to go kidnap somebody. They actually do that in real life. It's not at a mall. They do it at the guy's house, but they're that idiotic. And then they did things throughout the whole case that were crazy. But it was a very complex case. It was a legally complicated case. And the prosecution in Miami's district.
Cool. So Jen's just joined us. I know the audio changed when Jen joined us. So Alex, hopefully you can keep hearing us. Jen, do you have a question?
I do have a question. He mentioned, I heard you mention something, dog bites. And I'm wondering if you've been given a judgment against somebody for medical bills and stuff like that in a dog bite case. How long does that judgment last? And how, like, if I move from one state to another, what happens with that if they ever pay?
Okay. Well, typically, and I can only tell you typically because I don't know what state you're in, and secondly, I wouldn't know the laws of your particular state off the top of my head. But typically, judgments don't expire. They're not like patents. Okay. You get a judgment against somebody, you record it in the public records, and it usually accrues interest from the day it's issued or recorded until it's satisfied, and that could be forever. Now, sometimes they're never satisfied because, unfortunately, some people just don't have anything you can seize from them. But you can do what's called discovery in aid of execution, where you can, force the individual to come in and answer questions about what property they have, what assets they have, what bank accounts they have, all that stuff. And if they have anything of value, you can go after it. Now, in a lot of states, you can't go after their home. Their homestead is protected. That depends on the state. Florida is very protective of debtors, which is why O.J. Simpson moved here from California and took up residence here after he got that judgment against him because he didn't want anybody to take his stuff. But other states aren't. So you can have it. You can record it. Maybe you'll hit the lotto and you'll get
right.
But he may have assets or she may have assets that you can go after that aren't protected.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for letting me jump in.
Hey, good. It's nice to see you, Jen. If anyone else wants to jump in, I'm sure she won't mind if we're changing out seats.
Nope, not at all.
Bye, honey. Alex, someone wants to know your middle name. So what do you want to share?
Yeah.
Do you have one?
Right, well, my middle initial is E. Okay. So what do you think?
Eugene.
I don't know. Oh, hey, nice to see you, Robert.
Eugene.
All right. And
you said what'd you think?
I'm Cuban, so if it was Eugene, it'd probably be Eugenio. No.
Eduardo?
Eduardo is my brother, actually, Edward. My legal name is Alejandro, which is Alexander in Spanish. And my middle name is Enrique, which is Henry, except Alex Henry really doesn't sound good, but Alejandro Enrique actually flows better.
It sounds sexy when you say it with that whole Cuban accent thing. That's why I think I like it.
Oh,
so, Robert, welcome. Do you have a question or a comment
first
for
of all,
Alex?
I want to welcome Your Honor to Blab.
Oh, thank you, Robert.
See, he calls you Your Honor just from a respect point of view.
Well, I've seen him on TV before, skipping channels in the middle of the day while I'm doing proposal for social media, and I sit there, I go, oh, he's on. Let's see what idiots decided to put up and go on TV to be live in front of him.
I'm glad I didn't disappoint you. Supplies of idiots.
I never understand why anybody would put themselves on TV on things like that.
I never understand why anybody would do some of the things they did to get on TV.
That's true. That's true. So I actually have a question for you. I mean, I know there's some of your shows are still out there in repeats and things like that. Obviously, I don't think you're still live doing it, right?
No, it's not airing live that I know of. Well, it's not airing. It was never airing live, but it's not new cases airing, and I don't think it's on repeats. I think you can catch them on YouTube.
What's your thought now that you see Blab about attorneys and things like this being used on this type of social media platform to possibly iron out decisions, but publicly, but in a situation similar to what you did on TV, but not in a legal capacity, but maybe to iron out details? Could you see this being used?
Yeah, I think it has potential because you've got the ability to put in people, like you could have the judge, the two litigants, if it's a 2-litigant case, and you could have a box for a witness. You could do stuff like that, and people could watch and put in their comments. It's kind of an interesting idea. It may develop into something.
That I figured. Let me throw that in the back of your mind.
You want me to launch a show?
Why not?
All right.
Alex, Gary had a question.
I think it's more likely that Tristan would have the knowledge on how to make this work, but I definitely wouldn't mind consulting with him on it.
Tristan has the knowledge to make it work, and he would come to me to market it.
I should be paying Tristan as my co-host. That's what you should be getting money for, Tristan. You should be like a paid co-host. I'll pay for that. Happily pay for that.
Hey, I've got a whole team that does that for co-hosting. That is actually something that's on the cards.
Okay, good. But it's your face I want, so I'd have to pay premium. Hey, Alex, Gary wanted to know, are you a fan of the new open relationship with Cuba?
I'm fine with it. I don't like the way we did it because I think that we had the opportunity to get concessions and we got nothing. We didn't get anything. I mean, we didn't even get Robert Gross because, if Obama's telling us the truth, the president said that Robert Gross was not part of the deal, that was a humanitarian release. So he doesn't even get part of the negotiation. So what we got was they released some political prisoners that week and they rearrested them a week or two later. And number two, they said that what we got was the release of a Cuban military spy who had been spying for the U.S. He was allowed to leave. We've never seen that spy. We've never heard of that spy. He's now no longer a spy. So you would think he'd be on all the news shows talking about Cuba and the bad things they were doing and how he decided to spy for the U.S. and stuff. Nobody has ever seen, heard of, or gotten a name for this guy who's now out. So I believe that that's garbage, that he doesn't exist. There's no way to keep something like that secret. So I think we just basically opened the door to them without getting anything back. There were a lot of things we could have gotten back. There are Americans criminals who killed police officers in the U.S., fled, and are hiding in Cuba that are wanted here for killing police officers. I would have at least liked to have seen them sent back to face justice. We could have tried to get some concessions from them in personal freedoms because, remember, Cuba was propped up by the Soviet Union. The communist economy in Cuba can't survive on its own. So they were propped up by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed. They got propped up by Venezuela. Venezuela now is in worse condition than probably the Soviet Union. Argentina can't help them. So they are at their weakest, the Castro brothers. They are floundering. And this would have been a great time to say, you know what? We'll lift banking restrictions. We'll allow travel to the country. You can have an influx of dollars. But in exchange for that, we want unfettered access to the internet for the Cuban people. Okay, that would open their eyes to what the rest of the world looks like, which they don't have. They can't see anything outside of Cuba that the Cuban government doesn't want them to see. Freedom to criticize the government in newspapers or whatever without getting beaten to a pulp by your thugs. Like the women in white who every Sunday march from church and protest dressed in white for the political prisoners who are their husbands, and they get beaten routinely every Sunday by the thugs of the Cuban government. Sending back the criminals who are hiding there from the U.S. I mean, something. We got nothing. I know a lot of people are like, well, Cuba will be free once they start seeing, the capitalism that they have access to now. I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, I would like to believe that, but the Cuban government just takes all the dollars that comes in and puts it into their military police, which is the suppressive tool that they use to keep people from accessing the internet, to keep people from protesting without being beaten, all that stuff. So it's kind of like the Iran deal. I think that it was bad to give them, all this money, which then they are going to use to foment terrorism, to increase terrorism, and to continue their fist-hold grasp on their country. But I could be wrong, of course.
So a couple of things I just want to highlight. I made a joke about paying Tristan for his co-hosting services. He has a PayPal account. If you click on it, you can give him a donation and buy the guy a beer. So that's what I just did. So if you click on that link, just scroll through. I'm sure Tristan will be delighted to post that link again.
So is this saved? Is this, you said this is recorded. Can I go
back
and
so
watch?
That's where it's cool. As opposed to Periscope, which only sits there for like 24 hours unless you use Catch. The neat thing about Blab is that it's recorded, and then Brittany or one of the team will send you the MP3 and MP4, and then you can post it wherever you want. So I've been recording the crazy that has been our conversation today. So now that you are a judge and on the record for the comments that you made, that is all going to be recorded. So what I do want to do is I promised the judge that he and I would only hang for an hour, and I'm really conscious of time. It's already 12:17 at the time of me saying this. So what I want to do is if there's anyone who has questions that I haven't asked, if you can repost them, because there's been so many amazing comments that I've missed. I've really loved that we've had so many people in here asking the judge questions. Robert, I don't know if you have another one for him while you're in the hot seat. Please,
I don't know if
your
it's something he wants to answer. That'll be a
Remember, he needs a short answer because other people may have particular questions.
Today's
so
judicial system. What do you think? Today's judicial system. What do you think the main problem in the United States is? It's not a yes or no, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah. I think that there's a perception that the Supreme Court justices that what they do is not making law, and that by doing what they do, they're overstepping their authority, and they're really not. And they've made decisions I agree with. They've made decisions I totally disagree with, but it is the law. When Supreme Court justices interpret the Constitution, they're doing what they are supposed to do. Now it's up to the legislature. If the legislature wants to issue laws that kind of circumvent their ruling, and they've done that before, they can do that. But the Supreme Court's doing what they do. There are politicians out there who, if they disagree with something the Supreme Court does, whether it be on campaign financing by corporations or gay marriage rights, and that's on the opposite side of each spectrum as far as political parties, they trash the Supreme Court, and they tell the public and all their viewers and followers that they're exceeding their authority, and these are activist judges, and there's this all politicized. And in some respects, there may be a political aspect, because this court, the Supreme Court has been smacked in the past in the public because they split down party lines 5-4 over and over and over again. And that is true. But I think you do a disservice when you tell the public that the Supreme Court can't be trusted, because I think they can. I mean, I agree that, judges come, they're not raised in a petri dish. They're not raised in a test tube. They do come with their experiences, their life experiences, and their viewpoints. And sometimes you get a justice who's appointed by a conservative Republican president and ends up being very centrist or very even liberal, because once they're appointed, you can't do anything about it, and vice versa. So. And that's the way it should be. We should not have justices who are beholden to a particular party, because then you have basically what they're trying to do, which is race to replace retiring justices during an administration that thinks the way you think, so that we can have laws that are changed to think the way you think. And that's a very dangerous proposition, because you try to do it for your party, it's going to get done for the party you're not a part of too. And I think judges need to be much more neutral than that. And that means sometimes you're not going to agree with their decisions.
I'm going to pop out, let other people in. I'll definitely
nice to see you, Robert.
Because I definitely want to see if I can get you to talk about some other stuff too.
So give some props to Robert before he leaves us. Thanks again. I appreciate that. If anyone wants to jump in for the last couple minutes, Angela looks like she is keen. So we have to go in a few minutes, so we just have one or two more questions. Alex, one of the questions was, are you going to be supporting your favorite Aussie team in the World Cup?
Actually, I was supposed to ask you if you thought Australia was going to win the RWC.
Australia wins everything, right, Tristan? That's just what we do. We have the best cricketers in the world. We have the best rugby team in the world and the best looking rugby team, I'm just saying. So when you think about it, we truly, Australians are just phenomenal at their sport. So Angela, lovely to see you, honey. Do you have a question for the judge before we finish today?
How are you? Thank you for letting me in. Is it Neen? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And Tristan, thank you so much. Hello, Judge Alex.
Hi, how are you, Angela?
I'm good. Thank you. Okay, so quick question. Do you think you will start, and if you've answered this, just let me know and I'll make room for someone else to pop in. Do you think you will start orchestrating legal chats, giving people a forum for substantial content and professional value, or do you plan on using this platform for something more social and casual?
I think you could use. I think we could use it for both. I'm kind of excited about this platform. I think you can definitely use it for social chat and to just BS and relax and kick back and have a good time. But I'd like to also use it for substantive legal discussions. Like a lot of the questions we've had today have been really good questions. And I think that the problem with the legal, one of the problems with the legal system is that people don't trust what they don't know. And if they don't understand how the legal system works, then it's very easy to say, oh, that result happened because that judge is corrupt, or that happened because the jury was bought, or that happened because, and that's not the case. So it's a lot. You may disagree with the reasoning a judge used, but just like you disagree with it, a lot of people agree with it. So the viewpoints are out there. It's a question of whether they, a judge sees it one way or the other. So I think that's helpful to have this platform.
All right. Thank you so much.
Great question. Thanks, Angela. So there was another question, and that was, Tristan, you just reminded me, someone had asked the question. Let me just scroll back. Okay. If as a nation... if we as a nation vote for the language to be English, then how can it be overruled if we voted for it? That was the question. I'm sorry, I don't know who to acknowledge for that question.
I don't know what overruling we're talking about. If there was a court decision that determined that making English the official language of the United States was somehow unconstitutional, I didn't read that opinion. So I'd have to read the opinion if that happened to find out what the reasoning was behind it. I don't know that did happen, but I really have no knowledge about that to be able to comment about it, the law or any overruling of it.
Okay. So another question that Nick is asking is, Nick, is that a comment or a question? I can't really see. That doesn't make sense to me, but that could be just my stupidity, not your great question. A couple of final thoughts, or I'd love you to give some more props for the judge. I haven't seen anyone get as many props as you do. I don't know if that's because you have a sexy Cuban accent, or because you're good looking, or because you actually have fans. Like, people actually really like you. I don't know, but I think
people like me, Nina. I think it's really bugging you that people like me more than they like you, because
it's true. I am prettier than you, just for the record.
So much prettier than me.
Okay, Nick wants to join us, so Nick, come on in the last few minutes that we have. Hey.
Let me just say one thing before we go to Nick, and that is, I saw somebody put a comment there, and I think it related to my last question, which was, I saw somebody put something about it was in California that they voted for English only, and it got voted down. Okay, as a result of the California Constitution or something. And that may be because, remember, each state has its own constitution, and California's constitution could be very restrictive in ways that the United States Constitution or Florida's is not. But I didn't follow that case, so I don't know. You look like you're on a bike, Nick.
I'm walking the dog. See,
multitasking. I love productive people on Blab. Nice to see you, Nick.
Holding the camera for him.
No, she's down there. She's too small to hold the camera. No, I think I was sort of commenting on what Tristan had said. One of the questions somebody else had done, and maybe you can comment on it. In California, it's sort of similar to the we vote for English, but then it's overruled. And we had that issue here in California with gay marriage. The voters struck down gay marriage, but that was overruled by the court. And I think maybe if you could explain a little bit more for the lay listeners out there as to why such a thing can happen.
Okay.
And I'll take my answer offline. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Nice walk. Okay, so the way it works is the Constitution of the state and the Constitution of the United States is the framework upon which all laws must be built. So you can pass any law you want as long as it doesn't contradict what's in the Constitution of your state or the Constitution of the United States government. The U.S. Constitution is the minimum standards. In other words, the minimum protections that can be given. The state constitution can be more restrictive than that against government. In other words, it can provide more protection for people, but it can't be less protective. For example, if the U.S. Constitution, under the U.S. Constitution, has been determined that police officers can stop a car, and if they're arresting somebody, or if they pull somebody over and they have probable cause to believe there's evidence in the car, they can search the car without a warrant because it's mobile. That could be the minimum. That could be a standard that they say, okay, police have this authority. California could say, under our Constitution, we're not going to let police go that far. They need to go get a warrant. But they can't make it less restrictive and say you can pull them over without probable cause and search the car. So California's Constitution, whatever parts were relied on, if you pass laws, whether they be English-only laws, or you pass laws saying we're rejecting, we're not going to allow gay rights, gay marriage rights. We determined that marriage is between a man and a woman. Under the California Constitution, the way it's written, the justices in California can interpret and say, no, you know what? Under our Constitution, our equal protection clause does not allow you to, in our view, discriminate, against people who don't speak English by saying their language is not the quote unquote official language or whatever. I don't know what their ruling was. And I don't know why they came to the decisions that they did, because I'm not reading the cases, but I'm just saying that's the methodology. They look at the Constitution, the way it's been interpreted over many years, and all of that case law that exists is precedent. And that, it's difficult for a court, and it should be difficult for a court to break away from precedent, because they're supposed to rely on those decisions. It gives certainty to future actions that you can look back and go, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do based on the way the courts have ruled before. So any laws that are passed have to comply with that state constitution. So what might have been determined to be illegal under the California Constitution might be completely legal under the Utah Constitution, because they're different state constitutions, as long as they don't ultimately violate the United States Constitution, because that's the minimum. I hope that made sense.
You lost me before, but I'm blonde, and so I'm just going to assume I didn't understand some of that. But I did recently become an American citizen, so it is my responsibility to be able to get more educated on the system. So I just want to say a couple of things before we finish. If you are still on this Blab, thank you for joining us. I want you all to click on Tristan's little props and give him like a bazillion loves. There is a challenge to see if he can get as many loves for him as Judge Alex. I'm pretty sure, Alex, someone just sat on that little hand and they just kept doing it the whole time. I'm just saying.
Well, I was kind of hoping we get to 10,000, but I guess we're not going to make it. I'm going to.
Oh my gosh, you are hilarious. The gauntlet has been thrown down. So if you have nothing to do, you will make Alex feel better if you just like click on his little hands so we can get 10,000. Does that make you feel better today, honey?
I'm going to have to call my mother and criticize her for not continuing to hit those.
It's been a real treat to be able to hang out with you today. Hey, thanks for the congrats on being a citizen. I really appreciate that. It's so nice to see so many of you on Blab today. If you liked the Blab, please do. What?
Did you just get citizenship?
Yeah. Were you not listening? You never listen to me. I always tell you that. You never listen to me.
I think you might have said that when I was not on yet, because you were I didn't remember hearing that.
Yes, I did. I just became a citizen. So.
Oh, okay. I did that. I did.
It is exciting. Yeah. So I carry multiple passports when I go back to Oz. So I didn't give up my Australian citizenship.
You're deported.
Oh my gosh, you're crazy. Okay, so hopefully you have loved being around. Tristan has been the most amazing co-host. Many people, Alex, honey, have said that you are approachable and fun, and it has been such a treat to spend my Saturday morning with you.
Thank
you.
For
those of you who are fans, please follow Alex on Twitter. on Facebook. You can go and have a look around and watch some of the old episodes on YouTube. Please support Tristan and the work that he is doing as well. If you know any great clients for Tristan, I'm sure he would be happy to hear from you. And you can contribute to his beer fund if you click on the link that he posted in here. Tristan, thanks for posting so many links. I'm going to close you guys out. Alex, you know I love and adore you. Thanks for being with us today. Bye, Tristan. Honey, you are the best co-host. Thanks again. I really appreciate you. Enjoy your beer. And to the rest of us, do you want to say a final goodbye, my friend?
Yeah, thanks a lot to everyone for joining us. And thanks, Neen, for the beers that I'm going to enjoy later on.
It's my pleasure. It's always, I'm happy to make it my shout, my friend. All right, take care. Thanks for your comments, guys. I'm going to finish up this blab. I'll stay in for a few more minutes just to answer a few more questions. For those of you who joined us, thanks for being part of today. Please feel free to share the replay. I would love you to do that. Take care.